Hey, what's going on guys, this is Andrew Chicken and welcome back to another video. Today, I'll be going over at least one tip for every Paladins champion. These tips range from matchup advice, loadout tips, items you should be buying, and more, so stick around because you might learn something new. Also, if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to this channel because I'll be making many more champion guides in the future. We're also trying to reach 60k by the end of the year, and I'd really appreciate your support. But with all that being said, let's go ahead and get straight into the video. Androxus' ultimate is a powerful one if you know how to use it. It does 1000 damage per shot, but it can actually deal a burst of 1550 damage at the end, since the last round will instantly fire a regular shot along with it. If your aim is true, you can melt someone in seconds. Also, keep in mind that his ultimate doesn't apply cauterize, so it can sometimes be helpful to prime whoever you're ulting with a bit of cauterize on a regular shot before you start blasting. Ash's ultimate can be used in tight spaces to instantly stun a group of enemies, making them vulnerable to be easily finished off. You should try to use her ultimate aggressively to stun enemies in general, and use the fact that you're invincible to bully them to death. You also might not think to use her shield during her ultimate since she's, well, immortal. However, the shield can be helpful for blocking crowd control abilities that the enemies might use to counter your ultimate, such as Makoa's hook or Khan's ultimate. The same trick also helps for covering your shoulder bash if you're trying to retreat. You should use the card Phantom Pain in all of your Atlas builds to significantly boost the uptime of your wall. By hitting a rewind after the wall goes down, you can reduce the cooldown of the barrier by 5 seconds. Getting Chronos helps this even further and can make you extremely frustrating to fight against. Conviction doesn't just do damage if you hit a wall, it also does a small amount of damage if you pick someone up, which makes pinning someone in a duel useful even if there's no wall nearby. The displacement can also confuse them or throw off their aim, and the damage is enhanced by being above 80% ire. By using it in conjunction with his primary attacks and Reckoning, he can get a kill surprisingly quickly. Barik has a bunch of cheeky techniques he can use to enhance his gameplay. He can gain a lot of cooldown reduction by using one man's scrap, which reduces all active cooldowns when a turret is destroyed. He can then use the turrets to body block when his shield is down, and when the turrets are destroyed, he'll have another shield back. He can also use the payload to block damage far better than anyone else because he's a dwarf. Betty is surprisingly effective against enemy damage and flank champions if you use this trick. If you push an enemy around with explosive personality and hit them with a weapon shot in between each bounce, Betty can actually deal with many champions pretty well. Mastering Poppy Bomb is the key to mastering Bomb King as a whole, after you're familiar with his weapon shots. Use wall jumps to gain extra height with Poppy Bomb, and also use Poppy Bomb in combination with his ultimate to fly at the enemies and more effectively blow them up. You should also be using the card Shock and Awe to gain some truly incredible movement speed. A mistake a lot of Buck players make is using recovery in the middle of a 1v1. If you're in the middle of a fight, you should only be worried about shooting the enemy. Most enemies will either break even with or outdamage your recovery, especially the stronger Cauterize gets. Save recovery for recovering between fights, or buy yourself some time by dipping behind cover during a fight before you use it. Maintaining stacks with Caspian is tough, but this simple trick makes it much easier. Measured Cadence fires out a weaker version of Rogue's tempo for every 6 ammo consumed, and while most cards don't work with this weaker Rogue's tempo, one card does: Casual Competency. This card can help you keep your stacks up super easily, allowing you to take advantage of his powerful damage. You can also animation cancel his ultimate. By pressing Rogue's tempo immediately after the ultimate goes off, you can stun somebody and instantly start slashing away for some monstrous burst. Cassie is a very simple champion, and most of the skill with her comes from aiming her shots. You should try to combo her weapon shots with blast shots, and use her ultimate at the start of a point fight or during a tough push to give your team a leg up. Corvus' ultimate can be used in an unconventional way. If Corvus gets jumped by a flank, he can use his ultimate and just stay in the air to take advantage of the damage reduction and crowd control immunity that the ultimate grants him while his team finishes the enemies off. The damage from the ultimate isn't that great, but the damage reduction is a different story. While it might be tempting to spam broadsides on the point as Dredge, it's really not that effective. Since the bombs have such a long fuse time, you're rarely actually getting damage out of them. Instead, you can use the broadside as a movement ability with the card Crow's Nest, allowing you to propel yourself across the map like you're playing Bomb King. Drogoz' fire spit has a very weird hitbox. You can actually aim to the side of the fire spit and still detonate it without consuming the rocket. This can help you do a massive burst of damage very quickly, and it can cause his fair and balanced combo to kill the enemy instead of just leaving them on low health. Evie is a champion who requires a full guide, and as an Evie main I have a ton of tips I could put here, but if I had to give one tip, it would be this: time your ice block. Don't ice block randomly, ice block to strategically or reflexively block attacks that you know are coming, like Sha Lin's Cripple Arrow or Seris' Convergence. Also, time when you exit ice block. Don't just sit in ice block for the full 4 seconds unless the situation calls for it. You should try and leave ice block while an enemy is charging up a shot, reloading, or when you think you're in the least amount of danger and can leave without dying. You can also wait an ice block until your blink cooldown is back, and then leave as soon as that ability is available. Also, you can jump before casting ice block to carry momentum and stay moving when you otherwise would be stationary. I could talk about Evie tips for a whole video, but for now we sadly have to move on. Fernando is the biggest Michael Jackson fan in Paladins, because he's mastered the technique of moonwalking. If you jump while holding your shield up, flick behind you, press charge, and then flick back to where you were originally aiming, you can charge backwards while keeping your shield facing the enemies. This is much safer than if you were to dash away with your back facing the enemies. It's also way more stylish. Furia can use her ultimate to reach the high ground by combining it with wall jumps and aiming upwards. You shouldn't use it just for that reason, but it helps in a pinch. You should always save your ultimate for when the team is there to capitalize on it, and you should never just blow your ultimate when most of the team isn't there and you're just trying to survive a flanker. It is the best ultimate in the game when used properly, but you've got to time it right. Grohk is a hard counter to any champion with deployables. This is because with Maelstrom, he can get free bounces off of these deployables, making it way harder for the enemies to evade his damage. When combined with cards like Lightning Rod, this can also make Grohk one tough orc to kill. Just never buy Bulldozer with Grohk, because at that point you're just zapping yourself in the foot. Ladies and gentlemen, it's time to learn the most infamous tech in Paladins, Vine Tech. Grover's Vine can travel over 3 times the distance with this one simple trick. First, hold down Vine and hover over a piece of terrain that you can Vine to. Then, release the Vine and quickly flick to the area you want to actually Vine to, which can be much farther away. And presto blammo, you've traveled halfway across the map in an instant. Imani's ultimate is a finicky one, since it can wipe a team or be all but useless depending on how you use it. Something to keep in mind is that the enemies will almost always try to kill your vulnerable body while you're controlling the dragon, but you can use this to your advantage. If you know that enemies are coming to flank you, you can simply camp your body and bait them to come to you, instead of chasing after them and leaving your body vulnerable. You should also try and switch up the spot you ult from to keep the enemies on their toes. An important thing to learn with Inara is to cycle your abilities. You shouldn't use all your defensive abilities at once, because the enemies will easily be able to kill you when the duration of the abilities is up. Instead, you should cycle your abilities, so that you always have something available to defend against incoming damage. You should also use the card Sacred Ground, so that your Warder's Field can make you tankier. Io can be one of the toughest supports to flank if you play her properly. Luna basically acts like your own personal bodyguard, since she blocks incoming attacks while dishing out damage of her own. With the talent Lifelink, she can also heal you, making you even harder to kill. So, you should always keep Luna nearby so that you're ready to defend yourself at a moment's notice. You also shouldn't be afraid of using Io's ultimate in a 1v1 with a flanker. This ultimate can stun them, send them farther away from you, and deal 800 damage while making you briefly immortal. While sending the entire enemy team off the map certainly does sound appealing, 9 times out of 10 that doesn't work. Use it to defend yourself, because that's what the ult was made for. Don't use Binary Star when you play Jenos. This talent is a trap. Binary Star only does 16 more damage per second than his base Star Splitter, which isn't significant enough to make a difference. It also takes the same percentage of ammo to kill an enemy since they nerfed the ammo with this talent. So, it has the same DPS and the same ammo economy. The only thing you're getting with this talent is a harder weapon to use, and you don't get the benefit of his other 2 talents. Don't fall for this garbage, use Luminary or Power Cosmeme instead. My tip for Evil Mojo is to delete Kasumi from the game. But since they probably won't do that though, if you want to get better at Kasumi, there are a few cards to use that will really help you out. Surrounded by Fear is an excellent level 1 filler, since it helps you ramp up stacks more quickly at the start of a fight. Essence Drain is also a vital card to use, since it increases the damage of Savage Tear significantly when using the ability at 5 stacks. However, some people prefer to use Cursed Doll, and applies stacks quickly by using Savage Tear early, and then stabbing them to death with her primary fire. Really, the choice comes down to you. Here's a simple tip to make your Battle Shout way more effective. All you have to do to get the maximum healing out of the Battle Shout every time is simply to put your shield up. No kidding, if you put the shield up and wait for Cauterize to expire, you can Battle Shout as soon as the effect ends and get an 1100 burst heal even in late game. That is, assuming the enemies don't have Wrecker. There's a powerful movement technique you can do with Kinessa called bunny hopping. During a jump, you can scope in with a scoped movement speed card to travel a surprising distance before you hit the ground. Doing this after every shot can keep you fast on your feet and make it harder for the enemies to keep track of you. With Koga, it's important not to fall into the mindset of only using one of his 2 stances. With the card Swift Hands, he can switch between stances incredibly quickly, allowing him to more easily finish someone off with claws if he runs out of ammo. You can also use Nimble or any other movement speed buff to make his ultimate travel faster, making it more reliable. By using a wall jump, you can actually slide across some gaps to places you wouldn't expect. Two examples would be this gap on Ascension Peak, and more importantly, across the water on Fish Market. The most important thing to master with Lian is her combos. She can burst someone down incredibly quickly by interweaving primary attacks between her abilities, and with the card Swift Jade, she can do a combo that goes as follows: shoot, grace, shoot, valor, shoot, grace. Lian also has the unique perk of all her abilities counting as weapon shots, so Grace and Valor can potentially spread Cauterize across the entire enemy team. This makes her one of the best champions in the game to pair with Life Rip and certain weapon buffs like Furia's ultimate. You can actually use swarms to reveal enemies. If you hear someone like Sha Lin or Sky coming, you can put a swarm where you heard the sound and potentially find where they're coming from. Maeve is another champion who takes a lot of practice and dedication to truly master. I actually have a guide on her which just passed 100,000 views that I'll have linked in the description, but for now, a few simple tips would be to prioritize using your pounce for movement instead of damage most of the time. There are a few cases where cutting and bleeding is better than dodging and weaving, but oftentimes it's better to try and juke the enemies and dodge their attacks instead of diving at their face for that extra 400 damage. Maeve also isn't the scout from TF2, which means she has very little air control. Because of this, you should avoid doing unnecessary double jumps when possible. It can actually make it a bit easier to track you than if you were just doing regular strafing. It can also make it a bit harder to aim if your aim isn't that great. Really, double jumps should be reserved for fancy shenanigans with pounce and prowl instead of basic in-combat juking. Makoa's ultimate can be used in a pinch to instantly full heal him even through late game Cauterize. While your first instinct might be to try to use Makoa's ultimate aggressively to get kills and slap people with his anchor, that's not always the best way to use it. Instead, you could use it for its powerful burst heal, then cancel it when you're around half health and place down a shield or go back to long-ranged fighting. While it's not always necessary to cancel the ult, sometimes it's the best option. Bomba is yet another champion who I have a plethora of tips for, but an extremely important one is gourd management. Knowing where to throw your gourd is imperative to maximizing how effective you can be. Generally speaking, you should either throw it where the tanks are fighting, at a group of teammates, or at yourself. You can also try and use the gourd to heal allies who aren't directly in your line of sight, but this doesn't always work and really depends on the angle and where your teammates are going. You should generally avoid throwing the gourd at nimble champions like Maeve, Evie, and Drogoz. Also, whatever you do, never use this godforsaken talent. Spirit's Chosen is simply better for having more flexible healing output, and you also shouldn't sleep on the damage of the gourd. It's subtle, but that damage really adds up when an enemy you're fighting stands inside of it. Moji has a surprising amount of techniques that take her gameplay to the next level. The most important one is arguably the ability to cancel the animation of her ultimate. If you cast her ultimate and then immediately press Magic Barrier or Scamper, you can get some cheeky ultimate kills. Octavia is a pure aimer gamer who relies on good positioning and aim to get value. Take advantage of long sightlines and high grounds to get good angles on the enemies, and don't play too aggressively or too close to your tank. She is a mid-range champion who suffers at both close and long range, so try and stay at a healthy distance away from your opponents. There's a lot of niche and advanced tips for Pip, but one simpler and fundamental tip is to master the angles and detonation of his potion. If you didn't know, you can actually detonate the potion mid-flight by pressing the button again, which is extremely useful. Because of this, you can throw your potion between two teammates and detonate it mid-air to hit both of them, instead of having to choose between just one. The explosion can also heal teammates through walls, which you should definitely keep in mind. Raum is all about good positioning. It's imperative to play around cover, since Raum doesn't have his own shields or walls. By simply ducking around a corner for a second, you can cleanse Cauterize in late game to still get value out of Soul Harvest, or charge up his dash with minimal chances of it getting instantly crippled. With Ray, it's very important to balance between using your Spirit Link for healing and for ultimate generation. If most of the team is healthy, you should prioritize topping off the ultimates of allies who don't yet have their ultimate. However, if a teammate is under heavy fire, it's more important to use the Spirit Link to give them more healing and an envelop if necessary. You can also link someone immediately before leaving spawn to give them some quick ult charge at the start of a round. Ruckus is another tank who is heavily dependent upon positioning. More specifically, Ruckus relies on map knowledge to destroy his foes. You should spend time learning which regions of each map Ruckus can access using aerial assault so you can plan unconventional ambush spots and angles of attack. Also, when using his ultimate, you should try and get the jump on people by flying at them or using it from an angle they don't expect. A lot of Sati players underestimate how useful the coin can be. Not only is it great at finishing off low HP targets who scurry away behind cover, but it can also be used to hit invisible champions without needing Illuminate. If you hear someone like Sky coming, you can flick a coin up into the air, start blasting, and hit her without ever actually seeing where she is. If you're crafting your next Seris build and it doesn't have Veil in it, you're doing it wrong. Veil is a mandatory card for Seris that makes her movement ability so much more useful, because it greatly reduces the chances of you dying before you can successfully cast it. You should always have this card at least level 4, but usually level 5. That way, casting Shadow Travel becomes almost instantaneous, and you can survive whatever threat comes your way. Sha Lin is another simple champion like Cassie who's all about hitting shots and not much else. If you want to burst someone incredibly quickly, just do the classic combo of hitting them with Cripple Arrow then using Rapid Shot. Do you want my honest advice for Skye? Don't play her. Just don't. She's the worst character in the game without contest, and until Evil Mojo buffs or reworks her, she'll remain that way. She's good at stomping new players who don't yet know how to counter her, but that's it. Just play Sati if you want to play someone who's invisible, or boot up Overwatch and play Sombra. You'll have a much better time. With Strix, these two cards are super important. If you're using stealth in a fight, fast, unpredictable movement is key, but otherwise, the speed will help you reposition much more effectively, and guerrilla tactics will help you never run out of stealth. If you are playing Talus, how aggressive you should be is determined by if you have a teleporter active. If the teleporter is active, you should play super aggressively and try to get kills before it expires. Otherwise, you should play more passively, doing damage more carefully until the portal is back. You should almost never use your ultimate without having a portal down first, and you can immediately punch someone after the ult lands for a quick burst of 1200 damage. With Terminus, you need to be careful around certain characters when you ult. Androxus can reversal your ults back at you, Dredge can trap your ultimate with the Kraken and a broadside, and Atlas can rewind you as soon as your ult is finished to reset your health. For Atlas, it's as simple as buying resilience, but for the others, try not to ult when they're around. You also shouldn't really be concerned with the damage it deals, because Terminus ult rarely ever hits anybody. Here's a burst combo that can devastate the enemies: shoot, throw a sword with the Tyron's Fury talent, detonate the sword, and then shoot again. This combo makes it really easy to get kills when combat trance is down. There is an extremely important level 1 filler card for Torvald that can earn you a bunch of extra eliminations. If you're using the card Glyph of Freedom for cooldown reduction in your build, you should always pair it with Life Giver 1 or higher. This is because if you heal someone and then they get a kill, you can get an assist off that heal without ever having done an ounce of damage. So, if you heal your protection target, they can proc the card Glyph of Freedom for you, giving you way more shields it nullifies. Did you know that Hunter's Mark can give you free assists? If you've marked a target and someone else gets the kill, you can get an assist without ever dealing damage. Just like with Torvald, this is helpful for proccing a few different things, including her cooldown reduction on Elim card, and also Kill to Heal. This is even more important in the Dawnforge update, since Kill to Heal is becoming immune to Cauterize. When amplified even further with Hunting Party, Tyra is one tough cookie to crumble. Vatu's strength lies in his ability to pick his fights. You can use ambush to get right on top of someone, but be careful not to ambush in their face and take a load of bullets to the mouth. You can also weave through a lot of the maps with his dashes, and knowing which routes to take is key. You should prioritize playing him on maps where his mobility can shine, like Serpent Beach and Splitstone Quarry. Also, double dipping and damage reduction with a bit of healing on dash goes a long way, and I also highly recommend running the ambush range card as a level 2 filler for some extra quality of life. Seven is the most mobile champion in the game with the right build, and he relies on that mobility to shred through his opponents. You should combine Spring Loaded with the cards Latch and Fire, the Knight, and Terror to fly through the map, and buy Chronos to amplify the effect even further. Seven is extremely squishy, so don't get caught in one place for too long. Victor is a simple champion by design, since he's the default champion who's meant to ease you into the wild world that is Paladins. His ultimate is weird, but also surprisingly effective in some niche circumstances. You can use Victor's ultimate to devastate invisible champions and snipers, which is something he's really bad at normally. So if Strix is giving you trouble, you know exactly what to do. Vivian has been irrelevant for a while, but she's seen new light as one of the best counters to Kasumi in the game. If you're tired of dealing with Kasumi's auto-aim, just pick Vivian. Vivian's shield and ultimate drones obfuscate Kasumi's targeting, making it almost impossible to actually hit Vivian herself. Since Kasumi can't build stacks against shields and deployables, she deals damage to them really slowly, making it so Kasumi loses against Vivian almost every time. She simply can't deal enough damage to destroy Vivian's shield before Vivian kills her. Kasumi's only choice is to get someone else to fight Vivian, which is a dynamic I never thought we'd see with this champion. A classic and effective gameplay loop with Vora is to farm stacks on a target from a distance, then tendril in and either use Dark Siphon or Obliterate to finish someone off. Dark Siphon and Obliterate are both augmented at max stacks, so you'll want to farm stacks before actually engaging with anybody. You should prioritize using the Dark Siphon on targets with movement abilities who can get away like Seris, but sometimes the extra damage from Obliterate is more helpful than the cripple. Damage reduction on Flutter is an incredible card to boost Willow's survivability. You can also flutter into the sky before ulting to quickly gain some extra height, and Willow's ultimate can also be used to dodge crowd control effects with its CC immunity. Yagharoth is not a point tank. I don't care how beefy you think hardening is, that doesn't make her a good point tank who can stand up to Barik and his team on the objective. Yaggorath is a character who needs a lot of team coordination to work, and she's best played as an aggressive off tank who gives her team space and distracts the enemies. If you can, play her with some friends, because solo queuing with Yaggorath and casuals is just a miserable experience. Alright, listen. It's 2022, almost 2023. I thought we'd be past this, but I guess not. So, I'm going to say this real loud for the people in the back. Okay? Are you ready? Alright. Do not play Focusing Lens or Resonance if you're the only healer on your team. Ying players who do this are a scourge upon this game, and I'll never understand why they think they can solo heal without the healing talent. We don't have this problem with other healers, like you don't see Bomba players trying to heal with Rakona's Wrath, so pick the healing talent. I know you think you can do a lot of damage and carry by farming ults, but while you're busy worrying about DPSing the enemies, your entire team is dying because Ying's illusions are crap. Pick Life Exchange, especially now that it's been buffed, and heal your team like the support you are. Now, for those of you who already knew this, here's the real tip. Manage your illusions properly. Illusions serve as both her healing and movement tool, and so you should position your illusions in such a way that you can heal the team without the illusion getting destroyed, and teleport to safety if need be. I usually try to put one illusion in a place that's good for healing, and the other illusion in a place that's also okay for healing, but I can teleport to if need be. It's tough sometimes, but it's by far the most important aspect of her kit. And finally, we get to Xin. Xin is a pretty simple one, you just have to manage cooldowns to stay alive. Don't engage with Billow, you should be using it as a tool to escape and disengage. Instead, you should use Whirl to engage, and use Counter unpredictably in a fight to defend yourself from damage and burst down the enemies. And with the last character out of the way, that's going to be the end of this video. If you learned something new today, please drop a like and subscribe for more content like this from me. Also check out my Twitch channel and Discord server, both of which are linked in the description. But with that being said, thank you guys for watching, I will see you all next time, peace out.